Permettez-moi d'accueillir sur scène.
Please allow me to call up onto stage now Mr. President José Manuel Barroso, who was for 10 years the President of the European Commission, and who was also Minister of Foreign Affairs of Portugal. I think it's important to hear the voice of Europe here, of course. In addition, you're a fantastic French speaker, so you're a francophone, so we'll speak in French, if you don't mind, Mr. President. This morning you listened to the voice of the youth. We talked a lot about the issues and the challenges and the stakes and the opportunities that exist in Africa. What is your feeling? What is your feeling about Africa, Mr. President? Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation. I would like to thank my friend, the President Ali Bongo, for this invitation, and to tell you the pleasure and the honor that I feel at being with you and to share my experience. I'm somebody who's European, of course, but I've been accompanying for a long time now Africa, already back in the 80s. And it's precisely on the basis of that experience that I have that I believe that we have all reasons to be confident and optimistic. It's true that there are a lot of problems, a lot of issues in some of the African countries. But if you have a little flashback, how was it in the 80s and the 90s? The predominating feeling was really pessimistic. But today we hear so much success. This youth that we've been meeting, that we've been talking about, that we've been celebrating, the cases of some remarkable exploits that have taken place in Africa. Some governments, excellent governance in some countries. The rule of law and the growth in Africa, in average, will be higher than anywhere else in the world. Africa is the youngest continent in the world on this planet, and I have no doubt whatsoever that this trend of growth is going to maintain itself. It's going to pursue itself. Of course, there'll be uncertainty, there'll be troughs, but Africa remains the major reservoir of growth in the world on today's planet. And today, in this global world that we live in, there's so much, people are so worried, where's growth going to come from? Because it's true that the economies, they're having a number of issues, which are big ones today. How is it possible that with rates which are so low, investment still remains so timid to have more growth in the world? Of course, we need innovation, science, technology. Of course, we need that. But we also have a need to create new markets. And the biggest market in the world, which has not yet succeeded and reached its whole potential, it's here in Africa. So I have every reason to be confident when I look at that in the future. And I believe firmly that we need to rethink a lot of our traditional policies, in particular with regard to the private sector, because it's obvious that in some cases we don't have the budgetary margins to continue with our policies. And it's also because that would reflect a more balanced equilibrium between Africa and Europe. We need private sectors, and we're fighting against poverty, but at the same time, we need to help the training up and forming a middle class in Africa. We need public-private partnerships, and we need innovative ideas for the financing of elements and stuff in Africa. And I think we need to work along those paths. We talk about the crisis of employment in Africa, but Europe has its own problems, of course. What measures have been taken in Europe to stimulate employment that we could use as an inspiration in Africa? Well, situations are different. Europe, these economies, but among the most evolved in the world. Of course, we've had a crisis, and we're still living through this crisis. We seem to be coming out of it now, but I think that we are coming out of it, but it remains timid because the economies are more mature in Europe, and we've had a crisis which was, to a very large measure, the combination of a financial crisis and a crisis of the sovereign debt. Having said that, I believe that through some of the elements which are essential in Africa, we've found the solutions in Europe. Africa needs more, needs the markets to be to be bigger, because some countries are too small to attract the investment, the foreign investment in the long term, and responsible investment, of course, for raw materials. Yeah, of course, there'll all be multinationals who will be interested, but to diversify production, to have average, small and average and medium-sized companies. I think Africa needs European know-how, which is available, but which is not mobilized. So that's why I believe that one of the possibilities could be to use the fiscal instrument, the European fiscality. We have this emergency situation. I believe that's the biggest drama that we have in Europe today, which is migrants. Yes, of course, and the illegal immigrants and all the threats that can pose. We have to have a strategy which is on the short, medium, and long term. Of course, we've controlled these criminal networks. We need to control them. We need to have a policy also of welcome, of solidarity for these young people who are arriving. When I was president of the Commission, I was at the MP12 and at Lampedusa, and I'll never forget what I saw there in Lampedusa, to see the 300 coffins with children who died there at the same time. But as the President Ali Bongo said earlier on, and also the President of Ivory Coast, the key is in the countries of origin, of course, too, because you need the development. You need development in those countries of origin. And so we need to define a policy in the middle and long term whereby Europe can help those countries and help Africa in its own interest, strategy, which of course there need to be policies of safety and of policing, but it would be an illusion to think that just a security and a safety policy would solve the problem. So it's development, and it's the indigenous development, in order that the Africans want to stay within their own countries, and not only the Africans, because a lot of the problems now they're coming from Middle East, or from Syria and other places. And I think at the same time we could be more generous in Europe, and the Commission has always fought for that. It's now that I've left the functions that I had a simple idea. The European investments in these regions could have a fiscal benefit in their own countries, and with some fiscal benefits for small and medium companies in Europe, they could be ready to be more present in Africa. So their governments would give them these fiscal helps. The governments would do that. So if there was a European policy, an integrated European policy, that would be fantastic. But my experience, very frankly, tells me that it would be difficult to reach a fiscal agreement for all the European countries. But we couldn't do that because those companies who have competencies, who have know-how, which is sometimes not sufficiently used in Europe, they could bring frameworks. We could have a know-how and a technological transfer from the best companies, and to create riches together and to create wealth together. It's not just cooperation in the terms of charity. A charity is good, solidarity is good, but what we need to have is to attain a model which is anchored in the long term and opportunities for the companies, European companies and African companies working towards the development of Africa. A lot of Africa complain about the non-facilitation of going to do business in Europe, and reciprocally they want to export their products, but they have visa issues. What can we do there? The Commission has made huge efforts, and they're carrying on doing those efforts. It's my friend Jean-Claude Juncker now who is working towards a harmonization of visas throughout Europe. It still belongs, it's a national competency still, but you have to be very honest and very sincere when we're talking now here. The major preoccupation in Europe today is safety linked to some of these migratory flows. There is a threat of the terrorism threat, and it's it's a true threat that Africa is subject to. Also, it also doesn't come from Africa; it also comes from the Middle East. And I'll say it very clearly. I need to be with regard to, we need to be very firm with regard to international terrorism, because traditionally the people who were talking about development, they didn't like talking about safety. It's what I called Boy Scout mentality. We're working on development, we're working on humanitarian issues, we don't want to talk about safety, but that's a huge mistake, it's a fundamental mistake. Without stability, without peace, without states which are functioning, it's impossible. Development is impossible. We need to link all elements together in order to be able to guarantee this long-term stability. So once again, we need guarantees in place from Africa and also from other countries outside Africa, of course, who are asking for wider access to Europe and this capacity to put order within their countries, to ensure that drug traffickers or terrorist networks develop, or all types of international crime that they can't develop in their countries, because Europe needs also more opening. Europe needs to have a bigger and wider opening. And at the same time, and I'll be perfectly honest with you, we're preoccupied in Europe because in some of these countries, in Europe, there are extreme right, even sometimes xenophobic, and even a very strong word, and I'm aware of what I'm saying, are racist parties, racist political parties which are appearing. So we need to avoid movements appearing which would not be controlled, which could be, paradoxically, they could reinforce everything and help people, conform people in their ideas who are against all type of openings. So we need a responsible management for all that. It's why a more generous visa policy, of course, why not? But it needs to be based on responsibility. Mr. President, now that you're no longer in a political position, if I say, you've often told me about how much you love and how much you're committed to Africa. Have you got any ideas of things that you might want to do, to facilitate, to undertake in order to help Europe and the African continent to come closer together, be it economically or politically, etc.? Yes, absolutely. I remain as passionate as ever. And I started back in the 80s when I was a young Minister for Development, and I used to participate in peace processes in Africa, in Angola in particular, but also in other countries. And I'm proud of what, as a foreign minister and a prime minister also then of Portugal I did, and also president of the European Commission, we managed to do, because for 10 years we did a lot to reinforce the African dialogue. And President Ali Bongo made me the pleasure and the honor to come to Brussels to visit us there, and we talked about that a lot. And I think this partnership has moved on and has made great progress. Personally speaking, I'm interested. I remain very interested, of course. We're preparing a number of initiatives. One of the initiatives that I'd like to invite you all to join, it will be in Lisbon, in Cascais, close to Lisbon, at the beginning of June 2016. And it's absolutely exactly with that private sector dimension. It will be the Euro-African summit with regard to private business and some heads of state, but President Ali Bongo will be here, but also the President of Ghana and others have already given me the honor to be part of the honor of the committee, the honor committee for this initiative, so that there'll be other systems and other programs which are in place, and Richard Attias and the New York Forum are also going to participate in that, to see and to examine how we can develop more concretely some ideas for development, thinking in a creative manner about ways in which we can put into practice, because what I'm interested in, we talked here a lot about dreams, and I believe in dreams, I want dreams, but I want lucid dreams, dreams that we can really put into practice. So I'm going to carry on and continue my combat and continue with my passion for Africa. So you talk about dream. What is a dream that you would like to share with us here today, with our participants, with the youth here today? Hey, the dream, it's development of each person. I know well that often we talk about negative points, but if you look at child mortality and life expectancy in Africa and throughout the world generally, we're now better off than we were 10, 15, 30 years ago. So progress has been made, and progress is being made, and the history of the world, it's a history of progress. Sometimes there have been troughs and threats, but I believe in progress. I believe in the progress of humankind, but the progress of humankind, if I may, It's the progress of each person, of each individual. There was a British author who said, he didn't get on with his dad, he didn't like his father. He said, my father, he liked humankind in general, but he hated each person in particular. He hated each member of humankind. So when you think of humankind, you have to think of each individual, each man, each woman, each child, education. I think that's our dream. That's our dream. It's to have a civilization of globalization, which is not seen as something negative, but whereby we're all brothers, all sisters, we're all members of humankind. And I know Africa, and the creativity, the strength, the energy of this continent, I know it, and I think that can contribute greatly to that dream, and I hope that it's a dream which is realistic. Thank you, President Barroso. We can applaud you, and we thank you for your passion. Thank you, Emmanuel.
Maintenant, je souhaiterais appeler sur scène un héros du XXe siècle, une grande personnalité.
And now I'd like to call up on stage a huge hero of the 20th century. It's a true honor to have us here. It's to have President Lech WALESA. President, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, Your Excellencies, we all notice that we are really delayed, back behind. I'm not going to even make a greater delay on this agenda today. It was planned that I would have at the beginning for about 20 minutes an intervention, and then I was going to be given more time, but from what I see on the clock, I won't get much more time because everybody will have left by then. So I will try to kind of find a balance in the problems. Many of you may remember, but the young people may require this recollection. I led a huge revolution, and I led the huge revolution called Solidarity. And I was at the head of it at the moment when everybody considered that it was absolutely a hopeless case, a lost case, that there was no way of winning anything. The world was bipolar then, and there was this huge communism with the Soviet Union on the one hand and the rest of the world. My organization, my movement, and my struggle allowed to eliminate a lot of divisions of the then world. Divisions into antagonistic or totally different economic system, antagonistic political system, really very different, hermetic states closed within themselves, and all those divisions impeded both the development of both Europe and the world. To the surprise of the whole world, we succeeded in eradicating these divisions. However, now you need to realize that back then, the system of the then world worked out systems and structures that were effective in this world, where everybody was focused on the interest of one country, of a separate state. And what opened up was the possibility, due to the development of technology, to begin to think in larger structures than one country, one state. If you look at Europe, you may notice that we are lifting up borders between countries and introduce a single currency for all the countries. So, truly speaking, in Europe, we are now establishing a single state of all the member states in Europe. We are also convinced, myself as a revolutionary too, that other continents will follow in our footsteps only a little bit later. What are the problems and the obstacles in establishing good integration? As I was saying before, the old system had worked out its own solutions that were effective. Now each of our countries follows different religions or different values. We have a different background. So in order to integrate ourselves, it's not enough to open up borders and introduce one currency. But the question is what should serve as the foundation for this integrity. Half of the world says, well, the foundations can be found in freedoms, liberties, and free market economy only. The remaining half says, no, nothing stable can be based on such foundations. So in order to establish secure solutions and peaceful solutions, you need to focus more on values. But here, hence, we have a question, an open question, because we all follow different values. So actually, I think what we find eminent to prioritize our agenda on identifying like 10 secular commandments, major values that we would all share, that we would all follow throughout all the continents, which can be defined as the foundations on which we base all other solutions. The second major question will be, well, once we've got that, what would be the best economic system for that? It would be easier if we had the foundations, certainly not basing ourselves on communism, but on the other hand, not the capitalism that we have in place today. But things would be really easier because we would have the foundations. And another question would be, what should be the shape of democracy? It worked out fine when we were all enclosed within our respective states, whereas now we have to adjust democracy to the new challenges of greater structures, greater organizations that we form ourselves into. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, it is good that it was for our generation to succeed in eliminating great divisions in the world. But we would find it safer if we meet at different forums like this one, if we focus on individuals and solutions that should be identified as positive, but not for one state only, but let us identify which issues require a larger organization than just an attitude of one country. Let us not think in terms Republic of Gabon or Poland. Let us think at least in terms of continents, and only following that in terms of globalization. Globalization or continentalization, for the moment, are empty concepts, and unless we draw the right conclusions from the past, unless we disguise and notice all the opportunities, we can fill these concepts with good content. And in the future, they will say that our generation not only eliminated bad divisions, but also was able to construct things positively. No other generation before was given with the equal opportunity as ours to enjoy peace, prosperity, and well-being. I am really deeply confident that meeting ourselves at like this forum, we will, and throughout different continents, we will find the solutions, and we will make this world much better than the world that the former generation handed down to us. Well, I would conclude my introduction on this, and hopefully I will be able to make a different intervention for a longer time.
gentlemen.